Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask you to like us, please subscribe, and maybe even support us on Patreon. All of that helps keep us on the air. So today's guest is somebody who I met earlier in the year, and I've been trying to get her to free up her schedule enough to be on the podcast, and gee, it finally happened. I'm very excited to have Scarlet Fannin with us. She says she's a vibrant soul, a spirit of life, an emissary, and what she likes to call a mother tree. She's also a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner with a deep focus on psychedelics. Born in Prince George's County, Maryland, and raised mostly in Virginia, she proudly calls herself a Virginia girl, though she now lives in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. In January of 2021, Scarlet opened her private practice, Pathway to Mental Health, where she specializes in ketamine therapy. She's passionate about healing and growth. She's continued to dive deep into the world of psychedelics to support those who are ready to help themselves. And I have to say, in preparation for this interview, she gave me a taste of that, and I did have a ketamine session with Scarlet a while back, and we'll get into that at some point. So outside of her professional world, Scarlet has a wide range of personal interests. She loves to sing, hold sound ceremonies, spend time in the garden, and raise chickens. She shares life with her husband, Geoff Coleman, who's also involved in psychedelic study. At home, they're kept company by their two dogs, Tuco, Sugarplum, and Blondie, Spice Girl, and their two cats, Pepé Le Pew and Tuco. So now you know all there is to know about Charlotte, except a whole bunch more. So Charlotte, I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you talk about your spiritual journey from childhood until now. Take it away.
Well, hey, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here, and I can't thank you enough for having me. The first thing I have to say, though, is that you called me Charlotte a couple of times, and
Oh,
it's
did
not a
I?
bad thing. Oh, no, no, no. But listen, so it's a nod from my mother. Her name is Charlotte, and that doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, I really feel like okay, Scarlett's doing something else. Let me just
She,
go listen and see what's
she's here
happening.
with us, obviously.
And we had a little bit of a contentious relationship. So when she shows up now, mom passed in 20, 2017. And when she shows up now, I feel like it's a little bit more balanced with our
Yeah.
relationship. But yeah, so thank you for having me. Um, we did meet back in February of this year in Scottsdale, Arizona. And, I just kept noticing this man, and I just had to go sit down and talk with you. So I sat down, and one thing led to another, and you hand me your card. And I'm like, wow, I want to do a podcast. So it's so amazing that you're having me on your podcast. And I can't tell you how grateful I am. Thank you so much. Um, okay, so my spiritual journey, gee, I really feel like I've been focused on my spiritual journey for the last 5 years specifically, but honestly, it's been my entire life. And once you realize that, you know, it is a little bit easier. Um, when I was a child, my father wasn't around very much, and we had just mom around. And I started to realize that I needed to be happy. And mom didn't always make us didn't put us in the happy range. But I remember waking up one morning, I was real little, and I said, "Gee, I'm kind of sad today." And then after a little while, I laid there and I thought, I think I need to think about something that I have to look forward to. So I did that. And it took me a little while, and it was something down the road, maybe 2 or 3 weeks even. But once I found something to look forward to, I went to a happy place. And I remember thinking as a young child how happiness was a state of mind. I used to go to that state and I said, I want to live in that state. I want to live in a happy state. So I would, as a child, feel like I would go to the state that was happiness, just like there was Virginia or West Virginia or somewhere like that,
Yeah.
and that's where I lived. So I would live there. Um, Growing up, we were brought to many churches by dad. So our religion was such that he was always seeking, and so he taught me to be a seeker. And you know, the fundamental difference between my father and me is that he sought answers in order to figure out how he could get the world to change. I sought answers to figure out I needed to change and how, and I still seek answers to figure out where I might be lacking in my thinking or lacking in my feelings so that I can bring new answers or new solutions to people so that they can change themselves. And if you change yourself, then the world changes.
Right.
So there was that fundamental difference, between I thought he was I was raised in Pentecostal and Baptist and Methodist and Worldwide Church of God. Saturdays we had to go to church. One specific time when I was about 17, I woke up one day and I said, well, I was like crying and I thought, I need to go back to church. I wanted to go to church. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life because it was important to me. And dad took it very seriously. We hadn't been to church in years. But to go back to the Worldwide Church of God, you had to have the elders come and talk with you. And when they came, they set down a bunch of rules about, how you could wear your hair and how you wore your clothes and whether you wore jewelry or not. And we listened and they left and left. Dad turned around and looked at me and he said, you still want to go back to church? And I said, no, I don't want to go back to that. I said, that is not what I'm looking for. So, you know, it was more rules and regulations and had nothing to do with spirituality. And I know that I was being called spiritually, you know. So I didn't go to church for many, many more years. And I guess, in my early 20s, I met a man and we ended up falling in love and we got married. And so he was a member of the United Methodist Church. And it was a condition with him that I needed to be a member of the church. So I did. We were happy for about 10 years of our marriage, and I became a lay speaker for the United Methodist Church. Um, they sent me to school to get some training in writing, sermons and things. And so I did that for a while. I never felt like I was qualified. I feel like preachers have their feet to the fire, and because you're leading people. So I kind of just really made it more about spirituality. I would do what they needed me to do on Sundays, and I had 3 churches that I had to do on a Sunday when the preacher wasn't there. But I felt so uncomfortable. I just made it about how people felt and how they could find ways to be happier in their daily life. So I would match a scripture to a poem and to a life situation. And typically, almost every time someone would come and say, wow, you were talking to me today. And so I feel like, wow, if I did that, I did that. If I did nothing else, I did that. So again, it was more spirituality for me. But I really didn't get into the push for my own inner knowledge until it was 2005. I was I was hired to do a job, and I get hired to do many different jobs as a nurse. And I was hired as a hospice nurse for a while. I worked in hospice for many years. And during that time, I worked for a company that wasn't very nice. Um, and I developed medical issues. And I ended up seeing a kinesiologist who was typically more on the spiritual side or the energy side, but also spiritual. And I remember one day he yelled at me and said, "Don't you realize your husband manipulates you?" So, well, that was kind of the beginning of the end of that marriage. I met another woman named Carol Fitzpatrick, and this is all in 2005, who was a spirit guide. And she let me know one day when we were in session. I only saw her 4 times, but in one of the sessions, she started laughing. She was in trance and started laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" And she said, "Well, they're telling me you didn't want to be here." And I said, "Well, you mean in the room?" And she said, "No, on this planet." And I said, "Well, that's true." And it was so true, Bob, because it brought into focus at the moment that I never wanted to be on the planet. I never had suicidal thoughts, but I had many, many thoughts of, "I don't fit in. This isn't working. What's wrong with me? Why am I fighting again?" And it wasn't fighting so much people, but then it was fighting people. It wasn't an outward fight, it was an inward fight. I would have all these jobs and people would see my ability and they'd want me to be there. And soon as I got there, they would see how different I was. I thought differently. Not strangely, just differently. I don't the rat wheel like a lot of people do. I could never hold down a job for 25 years. And there are people who do it, very successful at it, but I can't do that. Um, And I'm a firm believer that the world, the universe, your inner guide, your higher consciousness, your observer self, whatever you want to call it, will absolutely challenge you until you do what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And wherever I went, I was challenged. I was challenged. I would find myself either quitting the job that I had, and then 3 times in my life I was fired. Um, and Each time I was relieved, whether I quit or whether they helped me out the door, I was relieved because I thought, "I don't wanna be like that. I don't wanna live like that." And most of the time, what would happen is that I would take a job because of fear. Like, I wouldn't get offered something better, or I wouldn't get offered something that I really wanted to do. So you just take it because it's what's being offered. So So working with people became something that I enjoyed and also something that was a great challenge for me, depending on where I was. Some of my favorite positions were working in hospice, working in cardiac, and then deciding that I was going to go back to school in 2017. So when I went back to school in 2017, it was the same day. The day I started was the day that my mother passed. I went back for my master's in nursing. And I decided that I was gonna get a, nursing lifespan so that I could just take care of patients, medical nursing, medical nurse practitioner. About 3 years into that program, I had a preceptor. It was my first year of precepting where I was actually in the doctor's office and kinda getting the skills and learning how to do things and being seasoned nurse practitioner. And this particular nurse practitioner absolutely threw me under the bus. And I thought, "Oh my God, what is going on?" I was at home on a Sunday and I got a call from my school that said, actually not a call, an email that said, "Don't go back to your precepting until we talk." Well, I didn't get to go back the whole semester and it was weeks in. So, long story short, she really felt that she had complained to my school that I had not done what I was supposed to do, that I was rude to everyone, including the doctors and her and the patients and the staff, and that's just not me. I'm not a
Yeah.
rude person. Well, you've seen me how many times, and I'm the same. So, I thought, "What is going on here?" And so the semester went by, they did a formal inquiry. Turns out they never did a formal inquiry, and at the end, I asked for the results. Nobody could give me results, and finally, I just said, "You know what's gonna happen? I'm gonna change. I'm gonna change my focus, and I'm gonna become a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I gotta figure out what's going on." So, came a psychiatric nurse practitioner because of that incident as a pivotal moment, but I'm at a point in my life where I can look back through my life and see all the little dots that connected me to where I am today, right? But that was a pivotal moment. Had I just said, "No, I gotta keep pushing on, keep pushing on, keep pushing on," but I got a clear message. You're not in the right place, and
Yeah.
we're gonna make it hard for you because you're not in the right place.
Uh-huh.
Whoever we are, right? Everybody has their own ideas. So I started, in a way, I owe a great thank you to that nurse practitioner
Mhm.
for because Bob, there's a saying, I can't be fully who I am unless you're fully who you are. And she was fully who she was at the moment, which pushed me into being more fully who I am.
Yeah.
So I graduated, um, and
Okay, you froze on the screen, so we're having difficulties here. Uh, Hopefully we'll
I
get
said,
you
"What's
back.
that?"
But okay. Uh, Scarlett, you froze there for a minute,
Oh,
so we didn't get anything from you.
where was it that I froze?
Uh, you were showing gratitude for the fact that she was fully who she was, so that you could be fully who you were, and then you froze.
So just start from there.
Yeah.
So so gratefully, oh gosh, now I've lost my train of thought, Bob.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Um, but that put me on my path, and as I'm in school, I kind of realized that I didn't want to give these medicines to anybody that I was studying about. So my husband said to me, "You need to do ketamine therapy."
Now,
And
which
so
which husband was that?
now this is my current husband and my
Okay.
last husband
All
and
right.
my best husband and my
Uh,
soulmate.
Okay.
So sorry. So, yeah, so let me back up for a minute. Maybe I jumped a little bit there, but, back in I left my first husband in 2008, and then in 2014, I married my soulmate, which is Geoff Coleman, and, he's been invested in my future,
Uh-huh.
in my growth, and I in his. It's very nice to have somebody who appreciates that you need to grow and that you have this inner searching and helps you do that, and
Mhm.
clears the path for you to
Yeah.
be able to continue that process. So when I decided to go back to school in 2017, he was all for it. A little bit incredulous, but he was all for it. And but in doing the psych portion of my schooling, I realized I didn't want to give anybody those medications. So he said, "You need to do ketamine." So I said, "What in the world is ketamine?" And he got me connected to some people who were already doing it in the DC area. I met Dr. Glick, who is a now retired psychiatrist who was very instrumental in my knowledge of ketamine initially. And in 2021, I graduated in 2020, and in 2021, I opened my private practice in that January, and in February, I went to my first training for ketamine. And I have to say, one of the best things I ever did in my life was take my first journey.
Yeah.
It changed my entire it just changed me. I remember, and I'm starting to get emotional because I remember being love bombed by the universe, and that's the only way I can say it. Um, I I felt so much love that I wanted to give it to the people in the room with me, and I just were thinking, "Is this coming to me? From me?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, it's me. I'm the love." And it was so big, as you can tell by my response here, it was so big you could not hold it. And that's what love is. And I have I have worked since then to try to help as many people find that love within themselves. That is,
Yeah.
how do you say, there's no bottom to it. I mean, it just is.
Well, I have to
So
say, I appreciate the fact that in preparation for this interview, you told me the only way you're going to understand what I'm talking about is for me to take you through this first. And that was such a marvelous experience. And for someone who didn't know you very well at the time, I just had full faith and trust in you uh, to take me through that. And you were so gentle with it in terms of asking me questions, making sure I was comfortable, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally with what you were about to do. And then starting out with a very small dose, just to say, this will help you figure out your comfort zone with this. And then you can decide if you want to take it further. And of course, as soon as I got through the small dose, I said, all right, give me more. uh, And it was such a mind expanding experience because for many years now, I've been talking about the concept of oneness. I've read about it. I've interviewed people who have a lot to say about it. I've felt it every once in a while myself. But to really know oneness, uh, it took ketamine to introduce me to being one with the universe. And it's something that once you've experienced, you can't unexperience it. It's now something you know, not something you think about or talk about, but it's something you know and understand. So thank you for that.
well, you're welcome, Bob. And to just preface this, you didn't just come here and take a journey. We did prep work. Um, and if you remember, you filled out a medical form.
Right.
You filled out, you told me about your psych history and your medical history because I have to be sure as a psychiatric nurse practitioner that you don't have a medical issue for a medical reason for anything that might be going on with you, whether it's depression or anxiety or whatever anybody ever has. I have to make
Yeah.
sure that they're safe to take the medicine, that there's no other mm, medicines that you may be taking or maybe taking on a regular basis that could interact with the medicine in a bad way or negative way for you, and you have to sign a consent. And so, and then once you're here, we do a lot of prep work. We
Right.
talk about, mindset. The mind is, so you wouldn't want to get fired from your job and come over here and take a journey, or
Yeah.
go anywhere and take a journey because, your mindset's not in a very good place. You're upset, you wouldn't want to have a death in the family and take a journey immediately. I mean, you, there are things that happen that you do need to take a journey, but there is this concept of set and setting. And so your mindset is your set. And it's my job, or anyone who's working with someone in that field, is to help you understand the medicine as far as ketamine goes. Ketamine doesn't give you the journey, your mind gives you the journey. Ketamine
Yeah.
opens the door. And it's up for you to walk through and take that journey. You can walk through in a very dark place and have lots of things going on that you really didn't expect. So for my part in it is to kind of talk with you and realize where you are, where your mindset is, and help you set an intention and get you ready for what might come up. And so that there's no huge surprises. And sometimes there are surprises, but no huge surprises that you could be like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. To help it be not to bypass what you need to work on, but to help you be ready for what may come up.
Mhm.
Okay. And then the setting is, a space where, so you wouldn't want to be in a setting where there's dogs barking and cars honking and lots of
Yeah.
traffic and people coming through the room and, just things that you wouldn't want. But you want a room or a space that's very quiet, that is conducive to relaxation, where you feel safe. Um, you talk about expectations. Also have to manage your expectations, because some people, there's 20 to 30% of the population that does not respond to ketamine. So you kind of have to, that's why I do a small dose even when I first meet someone, because it gives me an idea if they're going to respond, if there's going to be a non-responder, which is rare, but if they are, I certainly wouldn't want to set you up to do more
Yeah.
and then turn around and it's not going to work for you. So, um, but yeah, so background there so that you can see what, so that your audience can see that there's more to it than just coming and taking a
Right.
journey.
I didn't mean to
And then
give
there's,
that impression.
oh, no, 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 no. But then there's also integration, right? So there's talking about what happened. Um, it's different than therapy. Integration is really taking what you learned through or what you experienced in your journey and to bringing that into your life in a meaningful way,
Right.
incorporating it into your life.
And making sure I don't try to drive home when I can barely stand up.
Oh my gosh. People who do journeys have to have someone who brings them and comes and
Yeah.
picks them up. Absolutely, absolutely.
So I didn't mean to take you off track of your journey because I know there's more to that
Well,
journey.
but this is part of that. And, being in the psychedelic space from time to time in my trainings has really taught me lots of things about myself. Um, I have, so in the last 10 years, it's been a real focus on my inner growth, a more concentrated focus, I might say. Um, I think it started actually back in 2008 when I left my husband. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be controlled. I'm not going to be, um, I'm not going to be something that I'm not.
Mhm.
And moving into my future and deciding that, and I'm going to say this to you, Bob, when you decide to make a change in your life, as in divorce or it or anything, quitting a job or starting a new job, it's difficult just at its base. Um, and then all the factors that go into it. So when I left my first husband and decided to pursue my own, pursue my life in a different way, things became very difficult for a while. And it's not that I haven't had difficulty in my life prior to that. I've had lots of difficulty, like I've discussed before, about just not the right path, and it took me years to realize that when I'm not on my right path, I'm gonna get I like to say I'm gonna get kicked again.
Yeah.
It's like something's gonna happen, and I used to ask myself, well, what am I doing wrong? What did I do? Well, it's not something, that I actually did. It's just me making decisions that didn't line up with who I am.
Mhm.
And again, making decisions out of fear. So I decided that I was just not going to be fearful anymore. I'm going to step out. And once I started stepping out, things got a little rocky for a while, but then they just smoothed out for me. And I mean, I grew up in a household that was so poor. I mean, I remember in my teenage years, I had couple of years, somebody had to go buy my school clothes because my parents couldn't afford it. They just couldn't afford to buy my school clothes the next year for school. And and I know that there's people that's worse off than me, and there are people a lot better off than me. But I'm finding that, happiness and richness comes from your sense of who you are and understanding who you are from the inside. And I have built my life to be what I want it to be and what it's supposed to be. But at the same time, I could live under a rock. I could live under a rock with my husband and be absolutely as happy as I am where I'm living right now. Um, and I think that's important to understand about yourself. Sometimes I feel like I'm rattling. Um, in 20, so in the last 10 years, I started focusing on my inner growth and I did more psychedelic training. So I did training in Canada with stacking psychedelics. And any of the training that I did involved taking the medicines wherever I went so that I had experientials so that I would and
Mhm.
inevitably, Bob, when you do experientials and you're going to learn what the medicine does to you because you wouldn't want to give medicine to someone if you haven't ever experienced it. I'm a firm believer in that.
Right.
Um, but whenever you take the medicine, if your mindset is right and you're in a setting, which I made sure I was, you're learning things about yourself. Um, and it's not always easy. And there are none of those journeys do I ever want to take again, but I wouldn't have not taken any of them.
Yeah.
Because I learned so much about myself on each journey. Um, that's in Canada in April of 23, um, in Guatemala in November of 2023. All these journeys that I've taken, with ayahuasca, San Pedro, have all been eye openers for me.
Mhm.
Um, just when you think, sometimes you get this ego and oh, well, I'm doing pretty good. And then you take a medicine and you go, oh, well, I didn't know about that. I didn't know that I had that issue. I didn't know there was a problem there. So you can, even when you're learning about yourself, you don't realize you have a lot of these things that you've buried or that you've pushed down that you haven't dealt with.
Mhm.
And I guess I'll one example of how something can be buried, if that's okay. When I took ayahuasca for the first time in Guatemala, I was told after I took the medicine, to sit down, and I'm very sensitive. I didn't need much, and I don't believe people should all be given the same dose of thing.
Yeah.
So I was given a little bit, and within 20 minutes, it was activated in my system. And I remember I was told by the shaman, he told us all, he said, I want you to sit down and introduce yourself to a wise sage. and say, "Hello, my name is Scarlet, and it's nice to meet you." And so what I said personally was, "Please show me what I need to know. Please, please be gentle." And within 15 minutes, I had this vision. This vision came in my field of view. And I could see my father standing over here to the right with his back to me, but he was holding me as an infant, like that, you just in his arm, in his hands. And then to my left was my mother facing my father. And my father was looking at me as a infant. So I knew I was weeks old with adoration, total adoration. And I looked at my mother and I saw her reject me. And I got all the emotion from both of them in my body in that vision. I knew what she was doing. I knew what she was thinking. I knew what he was doing. I knew what he was thinking. He was love unconditional with me. And he's never looked at me like that.
Yeah.
All my life, I had contention with my mother. All my life as an adult, I felt like the other woman. And I remember before I went to Guatemala, I said, if you could open me up and scrape out what's in here, I would feel so much better. Right. And when I saw that, I thought, well, there it is. That's what's been in me. That's the book Vanderkolk wrote, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mhm.
That infant body was holding that energy from my mother. That infant body. Now, she loved me, but she didn't love me. She loved me because she had to. I don't think she loved me because I was the apple of her eye.
Yeah.
you know? And I don't hold it against my mother. I don't, but it's been a long time forgiving her. And that journey, I proceeded to have anguished grieving for 2 days. 2
Mhm.
days. But it was a growth moment like you wouldn't believe, you
Yeah.
know? So so lots of growth moments with lots of medicine, but also lots of growth moments without medicine. I am not one who feels like when things are going wrong that it's somebody else's fault that things are going wrong in my life. I feel like when things are going wrong, I need to look at what I'm doing and am I on my path, you
Yeah.
know? And I will say that for me, medicine has helped me walk my path a more seriously straight way.
Mhm.
Uh, and I also don't feel like one medicine is the right thing for everybody. I think that, I guess one of my favorite things to say is that not everybody needs a green M&M. People need different things in order to be able to find their way. And we're individuals as humans, and you know, there's different things that work for different people in order to be able to find their spiritual way.
Yeah.
Mine just happened to be mostly in this later part of my life, on the medicine path. So
So you recently went to Peru to pursue more plant medicine. So what sparked that? Why did you decide you needed to do more than you were already doing?
well, um, well, 2 things here recently I have done as far as I'm always trying to improve not only what I offer to others. So I'm like again, I'm seeking answers and I'm always reading, and I'm always exploring to try to find ways that because not everybody needs a green M&M, to try to be have like if you come to me, Bob, you may very well do well with ketamine, but somebody else may do better if they go to Peru take ayahuasca, or go to Guatemala and take ayahuasca, or go somewhere else and take psilocybin. So I mean, it's just different things for different people. Um, when I went to Canada, I was trained in stacking psychedelics, and I had an incredible journey with 3-MMC, 4C, 4-ACO DMT, and DMA, and a stack of that, which sounds incredible, but and I guess it was incredible, but it was incredible because it really opened me up. 3-MMC is a clarifier. 4-ACO DMT is a synthetic psilocybin. And then here recently, I went to Loveland, Colorado, and took a class experiential class with Pratty, which is a psychedelic training group, and it was all about end of life. So I'm certified. I've been a hospice nurse for years, and I've been doing ketamine for years, and now I've married ketamine and end of life. So I can, I'm certified there now, and there were 2 incredible journeys there that I took. The first journey I took told me that, I mean, I was all of a sudden being wrapped in Peruvian colors in Peru, because I had just come back from my first trip from Peru. And so I'm in this training in Loveland, Colorado, and I'm being wrapped in Peruvian colors. And I remember in my journey, I thought, oh my God, they're taking me. And then I was being pulled down, and I thought, oh, they're not taking me. They're claiming me. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm being claimed by the Peruvians. This is so in my mind, in my field of vision, and in my mind, in that journey, I was on my path, right? It was a validation for me. And then the second journey, it was just a joyful journey. It was a group experience, and I'm telling you, I laughed. It was all I could do to contain my laughter on my mat, on my little space, because there's 25 or 30 other people journeying in the room, and I'm on my space, and I'm laughing to the point that my feet are in the air, and I'm smacking my legs. I'm laughing, but I'm holding it all into my little container because I don't want to
Yeah.
mess with anybody else. I mean, I'm kind of conscious, but I'm not. And when they asked me to share, I remember saying, well, I'm laughing. They said, oh my God, every time we walk by, you were just cracking up. I said, well, yeah. I said, because I was shown the audacity of my thoughts. It's like, oh, you think you know so much. Well, it's just funny that you think you know so much. And I'm telling you, it was hysterical, because you do know things, but I mean, out of everything we know, I mean, we don't know much, right?
Yeah.
There's so much more. So then when I came back from there, my second trip to Peru, and the reason I was in Peru wasn't really for medicine, even though I took medicine while I was there the first time back in May of this year, which, by the way, was an incredible journey. So I'm just going to speak to that for a moment. I learned something in all my journeys. I have people who come and take ketamine journeys with me, and and afterwards, how was it? And they'll go, well, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? And they'll say, well, I don't know what to think. And I'm like, how'd you feel? How'd you feel? And it's a challenge sometimes to help people be in their feelings,
Yeah.
you know, to get out of the analytical mind, drop into the heart space. And how you do that is just say, how am I feeling now? That's your heart space. How am I feeling? But when you have a feeling in a journey like ketamine space, if your mind says this is what this is, that's what it is. So I can tell you that I've been in journey space and I've seen the Akashic records. Do I have somebody telling me that's the Akashic records? No. What's the Akashic records? Yes, because I saw the Akashic records. When it comes to you, you don't doubt it, is what I'm trying to say. So whatever comes to you. One time I was on the side of a mountain, and I was a train, and the next thing I know, I said, no, I'm not on a train. I am the train.
Yeah.
And I remember the thought in my head was, I don't want to jump off at the same spot. I don't want to jump off at the same spot.
Yeah.
So all that to me was, I don't want to repeat these mistakes I've been making.
Yeah.
So there's things that come.
Yeah. And
So fast forward.
I can just say that I know that you had music pumping when I was doing my ketamine trip, and I was the notes. I wasn't I wasn't hearing the notes, I wasn't listening to the notes, I was
For
the
the
notes. So I totally, understand what you mean when you say that.
Yeah, you when you get it, take it,
Yeah,
because that's what it is.
right.
And when you're the notes, you're the notes. Um, so fast forward back to the Loveland, Colorado. So I'm at the ayahuasca in my second or my first trip to Peru. So my first trip to Peru, I was in the ayahuasca journey. I didn't take it the second trip, and I'll tell you about that. But I did want to take one journey with ayahuasca with a I thought it was going to be a Peruvian shaman, but it actually was an Amazonian shaman named
Mm,
Roher. And I will tell you, it was a personalized experience. It was just me and one other person taking the medicine. We had a nurse, we had a shaman, and we had a translator. I remember there was a spiritual part of my journey. There was an ego part of my journey, and there was a somatic part of my journey. And yes, you do purge diarrhea or vomiting. This particular time, I had one purge, vomiting wise, and then you just go into your journey, you know. And I remember so this it was I remember laying back and going, talking to my heart, and I said, okay, you can do this. Just open and allow whatever to come to you to come to you. Just open yourself and allow. And I was talking to her like she was a girlfriend, and I said, you got this, girl, you know, my heart. And I said, let's just do it, you know, because I'm in Peru with an Amazonian shaman, and I'm and by myself basically, you know. And so there was a bit of bravery that I felt like I had, but it was just the most lovely experience. Was it hard? Yes. Um, I saw my father sitting in a chair in my right field of vision in a blue suit. As blue as, I don't know if you can see me, but as blue as my blue shirt I
yeah.
have on. And I thought, oh my God, there you are, you know? But one of the most interesting things was that I could hear ayahuasca. I could hear the voice, grandmother's voice, because we call ayahuasca mother
Yeah.
medicine. And I could hear her voice, and I heard her say, are you thinking? Why don't you think some more? Are you still thinking? Let's just keep thinking. And then I got a vision of a clown, a clown's face in my right field of vision, and he stuck his tongue out at me. Like here was a clown's face, and all of a sudden he went, like he just stuck his tongue out at me. And then I got a vision of a horse's ass, a black horse's ass with a tail, and he moved his tail to the side and he took a big dump. And I remember laughing in my head and going, I can clearly see how you feel about my thinking. I'm trying not to think. It was amazing. And I finally called the girl. I said, can you just help me stop thinking? Because she doesn't like my thinking, you know? And so I was this close to this open, expansive heart place. I could feel it right at the edge of it, like I was at the edge of a precipice, ready to just free fall because I was trusting, right?
Yeah.
And I just didn't quite get there.
Uh,
But no disappointments because I had lots of spiritual stuff that came through, and it was a beautiful, beautiful message for me. And I'm still a thinker, you know, and then one of these days I'm going to let that go, you know? So that was my first, and I did, and I did take some medicine while I was there, but I went there to do energy work, and I really wanted to get more involved with the energy side of healing people. So I took training while I was there. Actually, it was more energy work for us the first time I went to Peru, which was at the end of May this year. And while I was there, the people who own Peruvian shamans, it's a lovely couple who are Peruvian. They asked me if I would help them bring Peruvian shamans to the US. And so I went back and took shaman training with them at the end of July. And we had a couple of business meetings while I was there, and since then, we've had a business meeting since I've come home, and we are doing a partnership, and they're gonna bring Peruvian shamans to the United States because there's a lot of people who can't travel to Peru, and, but it's mostly just for the energy work.
Yeah.
This is energy. We're coming here to show people how to use the tools that the shamans use for energy work. So,
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's getting more and more difficult, though, for people from that part of the world to enter the United States.
well, it seems that way, and I will say this, that they have to go to Lima because 'cause they're in Cusco, so they went to Lima to, um, apply for their visas, and, they have, like, 22 shamans that they work with the Peruvian shamans, this
Yeah.
particular group, and they have male and female shamans, and, so they went to Lima to get about 4 of the shamans visas and to get themselves a visa, the husband and wife team. So they're going to go for 6 visas. And if they get the visas, and there's really not a reason, they just have to prove that that they're not going to stay.
Yeah.
Well, the owners have children, so they're going to go home, and they also have a business there, a viable business that they've been doing for 9 years. So the business is in Peru. So I I'm gonna be positive and say
Yeah.
that it's gonna happen, and, we're gonna work together here, and plus I'm gonna continue to travel there. They want me to
Yeah.
continue to travel there and help them on that end too, so I'll do the help them with the medicine there.
Yeah.
So so I took a week of training with the Peruvian shamans in the end of July, and I go back in a year and take another week of training, but I work with the energy work during this next and I've already started incorporating it into my, practice, the energy work with the chumpy stones and, lots of different ways that you, work with energy and how you call the energy in, which was really incredible to witness, to be a part of, and to now be doing myself, so.
Yeah. So at the end of this process, you will be considered a shaman yourself? Is that the goal?
It's a sh I think it's more of a Kiro shaman, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the shaman in training, you know?
Okay.
I'll never be there's listen, I am very respectful to, shamans who it's in their lineage. Shamans are not just I mean, you can study the shaman way, and there's different shaman ways depending on what country you're in, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, but a true shaman, in my humble opinion, is the people that I work with, and they're not only they don't only they're raised that way, they're born into it. Their father was a shaman or their mother was a shaman,
Mm.
and their mother's mother, their father's father, and so on back.
Yeah.
And you're born into that. I mean, and not every child becomes a shaman. They might have 6 or 8 kids and destined to be the shaman. Maybe there's a couple, but usually
Yeah.
it's very specific. So I respect that, and I just want you to know
Yeah,
I respect that.
I've interviewed at least 2 people on this, program, who have had, shamanic training,
Mhm.
but they call themselves shamanic practitioners. They don't take the title of shaman, and
Yeah.
they don't want people to call them shaman.
No, and as you can tell, you kinda set me up there, Bob, but I did I went with it. Like, when you asked me, "So, are you gonna be a shaman?" I'm like, "No."
Okay, well, there I wasn't setting a trap, I was just
No, no, I'm
just
teasing you. No, no, no.
getting your sense of it. Alright, what something that you've kind of skipped over here is your musical career.
Mm.
So, can you talk about that a little bit and how that's fit into your life?
Well, when I was growing up with daddy, he was a truck driver, and he used to take me on he used to sit nowadays you have to be in a seatbelt, right? But when he was truck driving, he had a lot of these Mack trucks, and Peterbilt trucks was his favorite. But he had a lot of these trucks he would sit in, and they didn't have a seat in the passenger side. And he
Yeah.
had an old metal fold-up chair. He would sit right there, and I swear to you, I would ride miles with him in a fold-up metal chair, sitting over there just singing to him, just singing.
Yeah,
And I
when you
knew
say that, I'm picturing why your mother's jealous of your relationship with him.
screw because he used to take me everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I sang to him, and he loved that, and if anybody would listen when I was growing up, I would sing. Um, so, fast forward, in my first marriage, I would sit in church, and there was probably only 14 in this little church. You remember years ago, there were a lot more churches, and everybody, was one on every corner basically, so everybody could walk to church.
Right.
So then in today's age, all these little churches in the country are kind of going under because everybody can drive to the big churches. So there was about 14 people on a Sunday, and I'd be sitting there, and I love to sing. So when we sang hymns, I was singing. And the minister said, I feel like you're singing to me. And he said, so I think you need to sing in the choir. To become the choir because there was no choir. And so I just started being pushed into these places, became a lead singer in my own band called Nominee Creek in Virginia for about 5 years, and sang a lot of bluegrass and country. Um, would love that. And then moved here to Maryland many years to find someone, but I ended up going to the Unitarian Universalist Church, which I absolutely love, and that's in Frederick, Maryland. I met a young woman named Julia Jones, and for another 5 or 6 years, she and I just did harmonies together. She was an alto. I'm a first soprano. I have a big range, and so did she. And she played guitar. I have a hard time playing anything. Some sound bowls now. Um, but she and I did a lot of harmony, and we would auction ourselves off for house concerts and make a lot of money for the church. So it was wonderful. Um, Lately, I have a surrogate mom. Her name is Martha Jones, and Martha has sang for years in the Frederick Chorale, which is a semi-professional group in Frederick, Maryland. And I had to sing with Martha at Frederick Chorale, so I did one season with them, did a spring, and called Still I Rise. And so I sang with Martha. And here recently, I just put on a little benefit singing for solidarity. What's today? Today's Tuesday, Wednesday, just this past Saturday. And
Yeah.
we didn't have a huge turnout, but we raised almost $600 and for the church and for Braver Angels, which is a community that builds solidarity. And so, because I am all about solidarity. You can think the way you want, but it's how you love the person in front of you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
remember
So,
calling or answering the phone on Sunday when I was at a fundraiser with friends of mine who were singing. Uh, and that was kind of coincidental or synchronistic that we were both at musical fundraisers on Sunday.
yes, indeed.
So I know that you also dabble in the auto harp
Well, I
because
did. Well, I
because
do dabble in the auto harp, and I'm gonna make a distinction. You take the fretboard off, and
uh,
then it's I mentioned Carol Fitzpatrick earlier. She's the spirit
right,
guide. Her husband is Mark Torgeson, and he is a musician extraordinaire. And he took the auto harp, so that I have to give him the credit. This is how I know it, and he would maybe give someone else credit. Um, but he took the auto harp, took the chord box off, or the chord keys off,
yeah,
and developed a tuning that is in relation to, there's such a thing called sacred geometry.
uh,
And in sacred geometry, you have the Platonic solids. and the dodecahedrons and all the different shapes, right? So he took those measurements of those platonic solids in relationship to the auto harp without the fretboard on it and created things that are just unbelievable, where you can just play it, just like almost like a harp. You just play it
Mhm.
and you do the strumming and you can strum it in different ways. Um, the one that I love the most is cosmic. Oh my gosh, it's escaping me now, but it's cosmic tuning. Um, it'll probably come to me, but it's just beautiful. That's what I played for you when you were here, um,
Yeah.
which I think gave you the bug. I think that gave you the
It
bug.
did. I had to go out and get an auto harp, and I need to come down. I know that we were trying to make that happen. We will make it happen, right? I'm gonna come
You will, oh,
down
absolutely.
and get an auto harp lesson, from you, and I'm going to take that board off before I come
Right.
down.
Right.
Uh,
Well, if you don't, I'll help you take it off. That's no problem.
well,
Um, we'll get it straight.
yeah.
Um, in between, musically, in between my 2 Peruvian trips and right before I went to Loveland, Colorado, I did go to Menla, which is up near Woodstock, New York, the
Mhm.
Catskills,
Yeah.
and I took an immersive sound ceremony
Uh-huh.
retreat, and it was really interesting. And they had a lot of they did a lot of sound ceremony for us, but in the process, they also showed us lots of different instruments and how they were played. They had specialists come in, but they also sold a lot of instruments, and I bought a Shruti box. I bought a Shruti box, which is almost like a squeeze back, like an
Yeah.
accordion,
Uh-huh.
but it's more where you pull and oh my God. So I've got a new toy that I'm playing with. Um, so I'll try to fix it to where if you bring your lovely wife, you come down and I'll do a little sound ceremony for you.
Well, that's our plan. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
we were recently at a session, with somebody doing the sound bowls, uh, the crystal bowls, or singing bowls, as they're also known as. Uh, and I love those. They take up a lot of space.
They do. I'm always at a loss. Like I have the singing bowls as well, and I would love to have a spot. And I don't have a small home. You've been here before, but still, I don't have a spot where I could just set them out and play them. When I want to play them, it's in order
Right.
to play them, I have to go get them out, take the covers off, set them up, and it does it is a little bit of a barrier to being able just to sit down and play. You
Right.
know, so I'm always thinking about, gee, what could I rearrange in my home to have them sitting out somewhere? What can I get rid of? So
Well, sound healing is a very real thing. Uh,
absolutely.
those frequencies that you can reach and that resonate with you, and then it gets you vibrating, and it's pretty, to me, it's just really exciting for my cells. you know
Oh, absolutely. If you remember when you came here, you were on a vibroacoustic table because I use
oh yeah.
VAT therapy, VAT therapy. So it's an in harmony, and I'm gonna plug in harmony here because I love their tables. I bought 2 of them. I have Sound Lounge 2, so I have 2 Sound Lounge 2s, and they not only vibrate in different places during the sound ceremony, they also, the music comes through the table, plus the vibrations come through the table and move around so that you're getting hertz not only auditorily, but you're also getting it vibratorily. So, you
No
know,
wonder I thought I was the music, that I was those notes. There's because I
and you
was.
had a headset on, so
Yeah,
you were like,
right.
and, you were, yeah,
What an
yeah. So,
amazing experience. Okay,
yeah.
so if somebody wanted to experience something with you, say a ketamine trip, or uh, go into therapy with you for whatever reason, Uh, how would they get a hold of you, and how busy are you? Can they get a hold of you and make an appointment?
Well, I mean, I am busy, but at the same I work part-time, so I am busy, but I also, I I'm I also do what I wanna do, so I have time. I think I pulled a card the other day. I do a lot of tarot reading, and I pulled a card for myself the other day, and it said that you're in a winter, and I was like, because I'm starting to slow down a bit,
Uh-huh.
and I am in a little bit of a winter. I mean, I do a lot of traveling, but I think I'm in the winter right before the spring with Peru shamans,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So, if they wanna get a hold of me, it's, Scarlet's with an S on both ends, Scarlets, pathway to mental health.com. And, I mean, all my information's on that website. My husband who works with me is also bioed on the website. I mostly just work with ketamine. I'm getting ready to revamp my webpage to add more about Peru shamans and also about the sound ceremony and things like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I've got time. I've got time to see. People who end up in front of me are people who need me.
Yeah.
Not because I have their answers, but because I'm the person that's gonna help them process. Bob, people go to therapy a lot. I've had people who've been to therapy for years and years and years, and this doesn't mean that I have the answers. All it means is they're going to therapy and they're not processing anything. They're just going to therapy.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to be in my life like that forever. When you come to see me, I wanna help you go live your life. I want you to just, I'm gonna walk with you only as long as I need to, and then I'm gonna let go. You need to go because it's your
Yeah.
life you wanna live, not mine,
Right.
you know? So when you wanna process, come see me. I'll help you process.
All right. You've watched enough of this program to know that we're just about at the end here, and that I'm going to give you the opportunity to leave this particular audience, while you've got them in your clutches, with a few words of wisdom.
Follow your bliss. That comes from Joseph Campbell. If you're making a decision and it's out of fear, don't do it. The only decision you ever should make is one that makes you happy, because a fearful decision is going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
When you make a happy decision, when you make a decision that excites you, that you can hardly hold yourself together for, that is where you need to be. So follow your bliss.
Well, audience, if that resonates with you, adapt it to your life and put the rest on the shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.